Coming up on Small Town Charm, we're going to continue our conversation about the new zoning, about the positive, the beautiful aspects of CD5 and why we all want it. We got the ladies here with us still, and they're going to keep talking about all that great stuff and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. It's all on Small Town Charm. All right, we're back. You've got a cat in your lap.
I do.
That's an addition.
I feel like Dr. Evil.
Yeah.
Very appropriate based on what we were talking about before we started recording just now. One thing I wanted to ask before we get into this discussion, this is just for my own personal education, is the 70 acres that we're talking about, is the Kroger development a part of that 70 acres?
No.
So that's separate.
No, that one's approved, ready to go.
Okay.
But it's adjacent.
It's adjacent.
Yeah.
It's so that road. So there's gonna be a road that runs alongside of Nolensville Road, which is gonna be like a secondary collector road, which is gonna go through like proposed CD5 downtown, dump into the Kroger development, have a roundabout, and kind of exit on Williams.
Okay.
Past Nolensville Road.
So just I got caught up in my own train of thought for a minute. Just the different densities. The last time that CD5 existed, it was down to 18. Is that right? 18 units per acre.
Mm-hmm.
So and then CD4 is what, 12?
Right.
So what's that? 6 units per acre difference times 70 was that 420 units different?
Right.
But the difference is 420 apartments versus 420 single family homes. I just love to see like just some math on like the difference in like the effect on schools.
Well, CD4 could have apartments too, correct?
Right. Yeah. It could.
Yeah.
Not big. CD4 cannot have like big standalone apartments, which is that's a big difference too. But like outside of the density, there's other ways you can limit, which we have limit density by hilltop preservation, by just
Green space.
Yeah, green space requirements, and just commercial minimums. So CD5 has a 30% commercial. It means 30% of your development has to be commercial. And if you run out of space, like sorry, sucks, you can't get your 24 or 18 units. Like that's a requirement. You have to have this much commercial. You have to have this much open space, and you cannot build above this point in the hilltop.
Yeah, it's a great point because I think it's really lost on a lot of people. Brian from TPUDC said this early on in the zoning process as like a rebuttal to the whole density debate. TPUDC doesn't even want to include density numbers in the character districts because they're arbitrary. They don't matter. So just because we say it's 12 in CD4, it's a theoretical number that it's going to be dependent on like the parcel and like what is actually available to be built on there. But there are all these other things and elements of the zoning that come into play that will take away somebody's ability to actually even build 12.
Right.
Right.
Like you may buy one parcel and it can get 10, and the parcel next to it, because of just the way it lays out and what you can use the land for and how you have to follow the other elements of the zoning, you may be able to get 6.
So it's not even like this is a new idea to me that I hadn't even thought about, which is it's not really like those are different pieces of land that will be sold, and even within that, once it gets developed, it'll be developed as different parcels of land.
Correct.
And so it won't just be like you're getting exactly even for even. Every acre has this many units somehow stacked on it. The number isn't even really, it's not even really an average because it's going to look it could look so different between each piece.
Now one developer could come in and buy like multiple parcels and put them together, and then like you're still going to have limits though. So like I just think what people are doing is they're saying, oh, like it's just if you have 10 acres of land and you have 24 units an acre, well that person then by right can build 240 units. And it's like, well, yeah, fine. We can all like do basic multiplication, but that's not how it actually works.
Right. So to kind of put that in perspective, like look, there's a real life example of that. So Land Innovations went under contract with 3 parcels, and they were using potential of CD5 to design their parcels, meaning they included whatever TPUDC wrote up, and they were able to maximize their land. They couldn't do more than 20 units an acre, even though they had a 24 unit acre allowance. They couldn't do more than 20.
So is that the picture that has
Yes.
been posted on social
That's
media?
20 units an acre, and it's
with the
they're-
pond, with the walkway
with-
over the pond,
with the
and
boardwalk type of
everything.
thing, right?
And
So
that's
The big
20.
pond, like
Yeah.
with the
The restaurant.
the restaurants overlooking it with patios.
If
and
you
I'll
all
add
have-
that
some
kind of
pics in
stuff.
on the
Yes.
show. I'll overlay some pictures when we're
Yeah.
talking about this.
Okay,
But,
good, because I was just
yeah.
about to describe it, but.
No, you can describe it too.
there was a,
Well,
there
a
was a
picture's
blue
worth
dot
it.
right there.
Do I have 1,000 words? Because the picture's worth 1,000
Well,
words.
describe it though, because there's audio podcast listeners who won't see the picture.
Okay.
So,
All
yeah.
right. Good point. So for those who are audio only, there's this picture that's on Facebook. It's buried in the comments on various posts, and I've been planning to make a post of my own with it as the front and center picture. But it's got the design from Land Innovations. There's a pond that has a boardwalk, so you can kind of walk over the water as you're walking with your family. Maybe you just went to an ice cream shop and your kids, you don't want to eat inside because they get all messy, so you take them outside to walk and lick their ice cream on the boardwalk.
Giving me chills.
It really is nice. There's restaurants, shopping, dining, all of the things that you would love to have. That's what this visual is. It's a plan from Land Innovations, and the new piece of information to me is what Mike just said was that plan. They're allowed 24, but they planned it at 20.
No, they didn't plan it.
They
They were-
used to
they-
be allowed 24.
With
but
all the
they-
regulations in place in that zone, they couldn't get more than 20
Right.
because you have to preserve hilltops. You have to build roads in, which require a right of way. You have to open space requirements, and you have the commercial minimums where 30% of that entire development has to be commercial.
And all of that takes effect before you build out anything else.
Anything,
so like
right.
you have to meet every single one of those requirements before you even start thinking
the
about
unit
living spaces.
the unit allowance is secondary to the regulations.
Yeah.
You can build up to this many units, but you have to build to the regulations to a T. And then when during the compromise, when they went down to 18, TPUDC said probably can make it work. Like we'll kind of maybe do bigger commercial spaces instead of having a 3,000 square foot restaurant. We'll do a 4,000 square foot restaurant.
Right.
We take some units away. It's within the variance, or it's within the variance of trying to make it work.
Right.
But if you take that down, if you just completely get rid of that and you do CD4, which we know is developable at 12 units an acre, they're just gonna plop in a neighborhood with
Yep.
your.
Well, that's an important point because the town nitpicked at 2 units per acre, against a business. I think I've mentioned this on the show before, but visually, 2 units per acre. If you're a citizen driving down the street, you will not see a difference in anything. With the difference of 2 units per acre make. You won't in any kind of road study or impact on school study. You won't see because how many acres was their development? It couldn't have been all 70, was it?
No, it was. So it was like
Even 140. You could have 140 theoretical extra units.
Extra
by
units,
2
right.
per acre. But again, we've already talked about that wouldn't even be that many. And so based on the math we've heard, I'm just spitballing here, but like 10%. The number of units is how many students you end up with. So you end up with what? 170.
1.4.
You end up with
1.5.
you end up with like
2.
17 or whatever. Yeah. Or no, sorry, 2 students.
2 students. Yeah, it would be like 1.7 students.
It was 10%, so it'd be 17 students if 170.
We can't do
units.
math.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
It's
It
because
doesn't
I'm
matter.
on a podcast.
Yeah.
Usually
I'm
I'm really
all
good at
frazzled.
math when I'm not on a podcast.
I'm just saying it's less than 20 students in the school at best or at most. So
Over
from a-
over the spread of three different school systems. So it's like
Right.
elementary, middle, high school.
right.
Yeah.
So from a people who are already here standpoint, it is completely arbitrary, makes no difference. You're getting it either way. But the town was willing to nitpick down to that level on this number that Chris has already mentioned again. Doesn't really matter. But as a business, you run your business with very strict guardrails and guidelines for what is profitable, what makes sense, what doesn't.
Right.
And so for a business, those 2 units per acre actually could make a difference enough to make you completely scrap your plans.
Correct.
Theoretically. They
You
don't.
know, you know what's interesting is actually first there was a compromise from 24 units down to 20, and then there was a second compromise from 20 down to 18.
Was
So-
it Joel
In
that
the
made the
same-
20?
I don't recall.
No,
but
it was Derek. Derek made it down to 20.
I really can't say. I don't recall.
Yeah.
Either way, though, it's just my point being you are nitpicking something that makes no difference to anybody in the town, but it makes a big difference to the people who are deciding whether or not to bring this thing that we're talking about. It could be this amazing experience for all the people who already live here.
I mean, you go in an ice cream shop and sometimes you only see 2 customers in there in the winter when it's a slow day. But maybe if there's an extra 140 units, maybe, that would
Right.
have been just enough to keep it viable and without
Yeah.
very small
I
number
just
of
I just think people don't seem to get that, like, even if you made it 100 units per acre, like, you couldn't physically build that.
Practicality doesn't enter
All
the
because
discussion.
of, like,
right.
Because no one's arguing the rest of the requirements. They're just arguing
no,
this
like,
random
this
density
one
number.
thing, which is the density number, doesn't control the entire zone. You have like 1,000 other checklist things that
Right.
you have to follow that are all dictated by, like, the land that you buy and, like, how big it is and how it's laid out and
The
what
grade,
you,
the
and,
creeks,
like,
the
how
the-
close to Nolensville Road are
the
you?
width,
Are you
right.
on Nolensville Road? Or are you on Williams Road? Like, all of those things are going to dictate far more than what this density number is. I think TPUDC just did the math of, like, okay, in theory, for this character district, most of these parcels, when they follow all of the other rules, the max you could potentially probably ever get is 24.
Right.
That's how I think they
if it's a flat rectangular lot
yeah,
with no streams.
Because Nolensville was like, we want a number. Like, they just came back and said, okay, well, if everything was perfect, you could probably get 24. That's like the max.
Yeah.
But I don't
Yeah.
think people understand that's a maximum. In reality, most of these parcels probably could only get 12 to 18.
And then the argument there would be like, well, everybody that builds in Nolensville builds to the maximum. It's because the zoning sucked.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
If you limit so much, where like the 6 units per acre in Greenberg North, you limited it down so much. The density was so low that it was very easy to hit 6. And they're like, yeah, we're just gonna build to the maximum because it's very easy. We could have built to 12,
Right.
but we're limited to 6. The limit sucks. If you set a reasonable limit, it's much harder for people to reach that limit. Then
And you get a higher end product.
and you get a higher end product.
Yeah.
Because then they get to go all out on the project.
Yep.
So,
So-
imagine Greenbrook North at like 24 acres a unit,
Right.
and they couldn't fit 24 acres a unit or 24 units an acre there.
Right.
But if they're able to just maximize that land, now it's no longer 70 townhomes covered in siding. Now there's a variation of products at a higher end clip,
Right.
and it's like 2 stories of commercial up there, and it makes much more sense. Instead of saying like, well, you're allowed 6, and they're like, all right, we just gotta stack them up. We just gotta get 6 in there. We gotta hit the maximum to get some type of dollar back, right?
Right.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about what Caitlin and you're definitely fighting for, and the reason why you got involved. And Liz, I know that it matters to you. It matters to all of us, but the 3 of us have sat here and
You've talked a lot about density.
right, exactly.
Density
got roped. We got roped
density
in.
is not why Liz and I are in the room. We're not here to
Yeah.
be passionately fighting for a density number. We're here to passionately be fighting for a vision for our town that I think could be so special, so beautiful, so unique, so charming. And I don't think that vision was really known until I posted a bunch of pictures on Facebook. I posted it in the Nolensville community page. Somebody else posted it in 411 because I'm not in 411. I posted it on my personal page, and I've created a petition now because the pictures really show the character of CD5, Character District 5.
I think this is a cool. I think this is a pretty cool contrast because people are asking, or at least me, is why is Caitlin doing this? Why aren't you doing this? Or why isn't anybody else doing this? Look, this is the perfect. I want to get into height requirements and density, and Caitlin's
Yeah.
like, ice cream on the boardwalk, guys.
Ice cream on the board. So zoning is not really my thing, but I really want this very special lifestyle, this small town, downtown lifestyle. Liz, I don't know where you grew up. I grew up in a town where we would ride our bikes and go get ice cream and sit at the fountain and ride back home, and that's what we did
One of the
every day.
One of the coolest commercial spaces I've ever walked into is in her hometown.
Wheaton, Illinois.
It was a
Google
popcorn
it.
shop. It was a popcorn shop. Dude, they they had
Oh, yeah.
2 buildings next to each other. There was probably like 6 feet between the buildings. They encapsulated
No,
it.
4 feet.
They encapsulated it and made it an ice cream store, or not a candy store.
So it's an
So-
alley. You walk in. You can't pass anybody without going like this, because you pass them like this, and you can't do it shoulder to shoulder. You have to be like chest to chest.
One wall is just a giant bookshelf of baskets of different candies. and then the other side of the building is just a line to the cash register that's on the end. That's
But
the entire
it's
store.
so
It's awesome.
unique
It's
and
iconic.
it's so special, and you can't duplicate that anywhere. Don't do that in Nolensville, because then it's just a copy of Wheaton, Illinois. We don't want a copy of Wheaton, Illinois.
Right.
We want someone to come here with really special ideas like that make it like, oh, I'm going to go to Wheaton so I can go to the popcorn shop, which we never went there for popcorn. We went there for candy.
Yeah.
But what can we do in Nolensville that brings us something special? And it's a place where, after you have an orchestra concert, instead of going to Sonic to celebrate the orchestra concert, you go to
Dang,
this
don't knock on
village
Sonic.
district. Well, I mean, I go to Sonic and I can't even get a booth sometimes because everybody goes to Sonic because
Right.
there's nothing
We
else.
love Sonic, but like there's nothing else for teenagers in this town to do other than go to Sonic.
was-
So let's create something
Let's
else.
create something else.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a skate park in the middle of this village center. Maybe there's a theater in the middle of this village center. We don't know because it's not here yet. But what we can do is we can make the zoning regulations, your fun thing, zoning. We can make the zoning regulations that will allow all of these possibilities. These possibilities can't happen under our current zoning. They can happen under CD5 because CD5 is supposed to be this special district. It's supposed to
Yeah.
be the place that the
Yep.
community comes and gathers. It's called, I keep messing it up. I keep calling it the village core. It's called the village center.
Right.
CD4 is called the neighborhood center.
Right.
And the zoning regulations, CD4, neighborhood center. CD5, village center. A place for the whole village. That's what we're trying to create
And
here.
it's funny to me because like I'm gonna ask a question here, and we're all extremely biased, so I already know the answer to this. What is the best event in town? Like once a year, this event happens, and it's the best event in town by far.
Broken Wheel.
Right. Broken
Buttercup
Wheel.
Festival.
So does Broken Wheel have enough parking?
No.
Do they have enough space?
No.
Is it crowded?
Yes.
But it's so freaking fun. You can bring your kids. There's beer. It happens on the lawn of the brewery. There is a distillery across the street.
Yep.
So like, there's so many people. There's not enough parking, but everybody goes because that is the community event. And I'm not knocking on Star Spangled or Veteran Day Parade or any of those.
There's lots of good events in town,
But-
and they all have problems with parking. They all have,
Right, but Broken Wheel specifically, it happens in a very small area with very limited resources, but it's like amazingly fun because it's for everyone. It's loud, it's kind of a mess. No offense, like meaning a mess, like it's.
Let's
I mean,
help
you-
organize it. That's why.
it happens on a lawn. It's like, like that's
Right.
the best example we have is like you pack a bunch of people together that you create you create a venue for people to just go and hang out and just enjoy whatever attractions or whatever food or drinks you can muster, and it becomes great. And nobody I don't know of anybody that says I'm not going to go to the Broken Wheel Festival because there's not enough parking. Or there's too many people, or the traffic to
Sure.
get out there sucks. Like that, it's just you go like those the things that hinder. They become they're not even good excuses not to go.
But
And
I
what-
will say it is an entirely different experience than going to like a festival in downtown Franklin.
you
And,
go to the
and
Broken
if
Wheel
you look at
Festival.
downtown Franklin, because they have that area and they can shut down the roads, and so nobody can drive in on those days, and it's like set up in such a way to where it's very walkable and very inviting. They have festivals frequently.
Don't they have that?
Like
big
they
one
have
there, right?
stuff that is like the level of Broken Wheel several times a year. Like it's
Oh,
not like a once a year
absolutely.
thing. It's like 2-3 times a quarter.
Well, and they have a special historic foundation that actually helps plan all this.
Right.
There's like 4 or 5 a year at least, and it brings in so much for those businesses,
Right.
for the residents. People come from all over the state to go to those.
Right.
But my point was that like all the things that people say that are negative about like building a village, like traffic and not enough parking and too many people, they're not negatives. That's what makes these village centers and village cores special, is because it's such a great community event that you don't even think about like, where am I gonna park? It's like, I'll find somewhere. Like, how am I
Right.
gonna, like, it's gonna suck getting out of there. Sure, like it.
No, for
whatever.
sure.
That's
That's
gonna
what
like
it
that's part of the experience. It's gonna suck. The dad's gonna be
Titans
cussing
games,
under his breath.
Titans games are a nightmare to get to and from, but you still go.
Yeah, and they
Yeah.
pack them up, right?
Yeah.
Well, another thing to mention is just the fact that you can't close Nolensville Road, right? It's a state route,
Right.
so you can't. The Buttercup Festival as slow as traffic is driving through there, I still kind of like get a little freaked out every time we walk up and down the street during that, because it's
You
like,
could cross that bridge over
Yeah.
there.
And you
Okay.
have one kid, we have 4.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like there's those little
absolutely.
flimsy ropes, just blocking off. I mean, cars, they're slowed down pretty well.
Yeah.
But then, it's bad for the people trying to get through town, and it's bad for the people at the event. It's actually not good for anybody.
Right.
Versus like what we're talking about is if you could have all these events in a place where you could close the roads down and everyone could ride their bikes over there if they wanted to, or they could park if they needed to, or walk over there or whatever. It's just not. I know I've seen some people who live north of town who complained about where the location of CD5, and it's like, well, I know that those people also wanted CD5 on their part of town as well.
Right.
So maybe they could fight to have CD5 up there too. That's there's a reason not to. It's like you don't. One good idea doesn't mean that you can't have a good idea somewhere else too. But just having access to something that, again, I think about our kid becoming a teenager, and like I know a lot of reasons why, kids get into crazy stuff when they're teenagers is just because they're bored, and they just want something to do. I was lucky enough where I grew up, we had plenty to do. It was a growing town, and there was plenty of places to go and do things. So I didn't fall into that, but like I know, like it's just like you talk about, like you go to small towns, and I'm not trying to fearmonger this because like you're always going to have problems. But
Right.
like I think for the most part, like the more rural you get, the more you see like drugs having a hold on like high schools.
Sure.
Or you see like that's why like girls get pregnant, a lot more in those areas because they're just bored. They're just getting into stuff that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise if they had something to do. Now, of course, all that stuff's going to happen anyway. My point is just I want my kid to have somewhere to go when he's older.
Yeah, and the CD5 zoning, this gives Nolensville the opportunity to shine.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not going to change Nolensville into something different. It's going to bring more of Nolensville out. It's going to bring more opportunities for Nolensville to be Nolensville.
So I can kind of get vulnerable in this point. So like if we get CD5, and I know for a fact I've talked to people that this will resonate with. If we build CD5, I will spend the rest of my life in Nolensville. If we don't,
100%.
Yeah.
like there's always that like Franklin's pretty nice. Like
If you say that, though, they're going to definitely not vote for CD5
Yeah,
because
they're
they're going to
just
be like,
gonna
let's
be
get them out of here.
if one mic goes away, another one steps in. Trust me. But it's like there's always this longing, right? So there's always this like, well, like where do you go for fun events? Like I mentioned Broken Wheel, and the first thing you thought of was Franklin does 4 of them.
Yeah.
Like Franklin does that on such a bigger scale, and you can just stay in Franklin, and even though there's traffic, it takes you 10 minutes to get into town in Franklin, and takes us 30 minutes to get into Franklin
Sure.
to enjoy those events. Like if you build that here, like that will satisfy all my needs, where I have somewhere to spend all my community time that I want. If you don't, then it's like I'm constantly going to Franklin, I'm constantly going to Mount Juliet, or you know,
Right.
like Brentwood doesn't have that. Brentwood doesn't have like a village setting. And
There was one weekend when we first moved here, and we were like, ooh, let's go find downtown Brentwood. And we drove, and we drove. I guess there's not a downtown
like what the
Right.
hell?
Yeah.
Well, I think that touches on, and it's a post that you made on Facebook as well, talking about time poor.
Right.
And like, how much time are we spending traveling to other places just to find things that we don't have here? And what would that look like? What would your life look like to have that time back if it was just here? Like, there's some things that we're not ever going to get, but like, what if we had a village core where you could have entertainment and have our own
Outdoor
Taste of Nolensville
music.
events
Right.
and live
Right.
music?
Why hasn't nobody
and-
talked about the live music?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of close to my backyard. I don't want to hear it.
That's literally this backyard.
Yeah, that's true. It's like right there.
I
We
did
see the
think
tower from our deck.
To your point, though, Mike, like, I mean, I have those same feelings all the time of like, oh, it'd be really nice to live in Franklin for this reason or that reason. One thing, like, I mean, Liz and I learned this when we worked at the brewery that, like, the Williamson County, like, tourism board, so, like, the whole group that, like, is dedicated to promoting tourism
Right.
for the whole county. What do you think it's called?
Visit Franklin.
It's
right?
called Visit Franklin, like for the entire county. Now they promote like all the other cities and stuff too, but like there's a reason that it's called Visit Franklin. It's because like Franklin is like the gold star, like golden child of the county. It's like what the county is known for. And I just think that it's like, do we want to be like Franklin? Not in every way, we're never going to be like their population size. I know you think differently, but we could potentially but I do think that there's some really amazing things that Franklin has done, and they realized at some point in time just building homes, like just building neighborhoods, doesn't work. You need other stuff. So let's revitalize our historic district. Let's build some of these other kind of like village-y type of developments that are all kind of like around the downtown, and like have them flow into that. And then like with that comes, to Caitlin's point, opportunity. It's like if you put the zoning in place, and I know I've made this post somewhere else about like this is like a math equation to me, and we keep trying as a town to just solve for development, which is like the wrong thing to solve. Like, so we're trying to like basically dictate
Limit.
how things can
And limit it,
how things can be developed. And to me, it's like put anything after the equal sign: traffic, infrastructure, police, fire, whatever you want to like fund in town. All the things the town needs to pay for, like those get paid for by taxes. And so it's like zoning plus development plus taxes equals all those things. In order for us to actually like solve the problem, we need to solve zoning. And that's why I think that this is so important. It's like zoning creates opportunity. It either creates opportunity for developers to come in and build. There you go, Daniel. Write that one down.
33 seconds left in the.
Like, they will either build absolute or they
okay.
will build something beautiful, and like it will have all the kinds of things that we're describing that these other municipalities have. And
But also tax revenue.
correct. And like and those kinds of development happen to drive more tax revenue, which will then limit how much our property taxes have to go up.
Right. So let me I wanted to kind of like marry the two thoughts, like the idea of the positive of what this thing could be, and then like then see all this math stuff that we've talked about before. And I think a lot of, Mike, you mentioned like, Franklin looks pretty nice. People are going to say, well, why did you move here then if you want it to be so much like Franklin or whatever else? And my answer to that would be like, because we liked what it was when we moved here. And if it never changed, maybe we still wouldn't leave. But like you said, it presents an opportunity. So like the I love like a good analogy. It's like the doctor comes to you and says, hey, like you're like have a life-threatening illness, and we got two ways to treat it. And the way I see it is this town has got, like, from a financial standpoint, like we've got so many liabilities and so many things need to be worked on or grown. It's a life-threatening illness. And the doctor says you got two ways you can treat it. We can either cut off one of your limbs, or you can actually treat this by eating pizza and candy for the rest of your life and nothing else. And you'll be healthy and great. And so like we're presented with this like pizza and candy version of like this is a solution to our problem, which is why like we're talking about this positive stuff. So we can solve all these problems and get something that's so amazing. Why would we pick the other way? That's I think what we're trying to get at with this.
I'm going to give you a closing, and hopefully the cameras are still rolling. So during Planapalooza, TPUDC's one of their main questions was, is this your forever home? Over 90% of the answers were no.
Hey, thanks for watching Small Town Charm. This is the end of our conversation about the positive aspects of CD5 and why we think it's a great fit for Nolensville, and why we have a unique opportunity right now to take advantage of what's coming. And so we'll be back again really soon to talk more. We'll actually have these two with us again for another episode, talking more about the nitty-gritty about finances and things like that. But that's coming up on a soon-to-come episode of Small Town Charm. But for now, we'll say bye. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon.